Hey, this is Nate from the Bike Company. We're going to watch BikeCo owner Joe Binatena go through a basic headset adjustment as well as troubleshoot some of the common issues you may come across while adjusting a headset. You know your headset needs to be adjusted if you feel a click out of the front end and you really want to isolate that it is the headset. We're going to go through some of that a little bit deeper in the troubleshooting, but basically, if you can put your hand on top of the headset, and when that bike rocks, if you feel that click really isolated there, you're going to want to tighten your headset. First thing that you're going to do is you're going to loosen the stem on the steerer. You don't want to loosen it so much that the wheel flops everywhere, but loose enough that your top cap adjustment bolt is going to be able to properly adjust that headset. So you go ahead and hold that front brake. And while you hold the front brake, with your other hand, you're going to use a tool to tighten the top cap adjuster and slightly rock the bike. And that rocking is going to allow all the chamfered edges of your headset to settle in properly, and it's going to avoid bolt bind that can happen if you don't have the motion to let everything settle in like that. Once the click is gone, your headset is probably properly adjusted. You're going to go ahead and tighten up the cockpit and test it. So you're going to straighten your handlebars. You can see Joe taps the handlebars in order to straighten them. And you're going to tighten the stem back to the steerer. Alternate the bolts while you're tightening this. You're going to go back and forth a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and bring them up to the torque spec that's going to be printed on the stem. After that, you want to check that your handlebars move freely, that the click is gone. And if that's the case, you're going to want to go and test ride that bike. Be aware that you're going to need to bolt check it probably before and after the first couple rides. Anytime that you mess with your cockpit, plan on a bolt check. It's a tiny little bolt that's holding a large load. There can be some settle in. It's important that you bolt check and check your work. So let's look at some common issues. Common might not be exactly the right word. Let's look at some issues you might come across when adjusting your headset. So the first one we're going to look at is, do you have enough headset spacers installed? It's not frequent per se, but it's not infrequent either, especially for home builds or people who are maybe a little new to this, who don't give themselves enough of a gap between the steer tube and their top cap. The way to isolate this is if you've adjusted the headset to the point where it's just got nothing left on that top cap adjuster, and when you bounce the bike, you still hear this reverb or this kind of you've got something loose. Now you're going to want to isolate and make sure it's not in the linkage or in an axle or a hub. But if you know this headset's not getting adjusted and you get this noise, you're probably going to need to add another spacer. You can see here we're going to look at one that's just too close. It's not going to work. And then we'll look at one on the larger side where it's got a little bigger gap than you might see typically, but this is for an example. One way to know if you're too close on your steer tube and headset spacers is you'll see witness marks on the top cap. So you see this tiny little scratch. In machinist terms, that's a witness mark. It witnesses that two things have come in contact. Another thing that you're going to want to check, and remember, these bikes are kind of like tuning forks, so it's not uncommon to chase a click a little bit. If you have your headset adjusted properly and you're still noticing a click out of the front end, you're going to want to check, is it the fork bushings? Fork bushings have a little bit of play in them as they age. If it's something that feels excessive, you definitely want to have it looked at. You're going to want to check your brake pad and rotor rock. The brake pad and the rotor, the pads in the caliper will move just slightly, and you'll feel a little bit of a tick, 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 tick. One way to get around that is to turn the wheel to 90 degrees to kind of check that. Another place to look is your hub and axle interface. Is your axle snug? Are your hubs adjusted properly? Typically, one of these things is going to be your click if you have adjusted your headset and you're still having an issue.